Hi there, I'm Gloria Macarenko. Now, the changing of the seasons do bring so much comfort, and no matter what news breaks, we can always count on the spring blossoms. This is our Vancouver. Coming up, forget condos. It's a captain's life for him on his own houseboat. And those passionate about plant-based food need to be mindful of their sugar source. But first, horror, hope, and home. A young actor returns to play a war hero. Now, with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the prospect of a full world war is back on the table. Now, this is a scenario no one expected to happen again. The horrors of war have been long documented in many films and books and plays over the decades, including the story of John Weir Foote, who was the only Canadian Army chaplain to win the Victoria Cross during World War II. Well, Dallen Brodowski is bringing that story to life in a play showing in his hometown of Pemberton and also in Whistler. Dallen, hello there. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So just how much of a challenge is it to play a war hero and all of the emotion or turmoil that can bring?
I'll say it is definitely a challenge, but what is more difficult is the character of John Foote. He wasn't so much focused on the hardship. What helped him was to focus on like the love that he could find in the world, like to support his men. And I found that is what helps me most, like really get into like how he was feeling during those times. Because if you focused on all the hardship and the sadness, then you had nowhere to go from there.
And what is his story? Who was John Weir Foote?
John Weir Foote was he was an everyman for most of his life. But when the call to action came, he enlisted in the Canadian Chaplain Service. He was a priest before a preacher, but he felt that he was going to be best needed overseas, fighting alongside the men to save the world. He was a farmer. He played in a band. He was just really like an honest working man that loved his neighbor as he had done his whole life. He was the only Canadian chaplain who won the Victoria Cross.
Yeah. So what attracted you to his story? Why did you want to play him?
In all honesty, it kind of came onto my doorstep. My old drama teacher, Ren, she called me up one day and said, "I have a really amazing opportunity for you," and I was hoping you consider it. She knew of the play, she knew of his story. I had never heard of it, and I was surprised I had never heard of it until I turned just 22. She called me up and said, "Hey, I'd love for you to do this show with me," and I'd actually in the spring before then. She called me in around October. In April, I had done a show at Capilano University, which was Unity 1918, which is also was very topical with the Spanish influenza. I played a soldier named Hart. It wasn't a true story, but based off true events. So I already kind of had that in my bag recently. So I thought I might as well give it another shot.
Well, I think that's kind of cool that your former drama teacher contacts you. So I'm thinking about all the people taking drama today. How does that underscore that relationship between student, actor, and teacher?
Well, she was there from the beginning. She was actually, I first met Ren, she was my substitute gym teacher in grade 10. That was the first time I met her, but I hadn't joined drama at that point in time. But once I did, I started to get to know her more, and then we had a really good group back then, and we just always kept touch. And at first we were, student teacher, but it wasn't long before we were just friends. And honestly, that just made it even better.
I'm glad that's working for you for sure. Now, when we think about what's going on right now, and before you started on this, before we actually knew there was a war in Ukraine with the Russian invasion, how much of that actually goes through your mind as you're rehearsing for this play?
A lot, actually. I'm not directly from Ukraine. I don't have a lot of family that I know from Ukraine, but that is where that's where my family originally came from. So I think about it often, and I do want to. There's a beautiful message in this play about the tragedy of war and how war is unfortunately almost inevitable, with just the repeating of history. And I want people to come away seeing the show having that fresh in their mind and just keep a good perspective, because we're living through history. Unfortunately, it's the history books that no one wants to write right now.
So true. No, that's so true. And when people do come and watch your play, chances are there'll be a lot of familiar faces in the audience too. So what does it mean for you, to go home, show what you can do for a hometown crowd?
I mean, I didn't think I'd be doing it so soon. I left to go to university. I thought that was going to be my start. I didn't think I'd be coming back so quick, but I mean, there's no place I'd rather tell a story like this.
Dallen, we wish you all the best with the run. Thank you so much. It's so good to meet you.
Well, thank you so much.
Storm clouds were gathering. While I was busy pastoring, playing clarinet and trumpet in the town band, and raising chickens, Hitler was busy setting the stage for a conflict that would change the world and change my life forever. September. War came. From all over Canada, brave men joined up to fight. I decided the best place for me would be on the battlefield beside them.
Hi, I'm Matt, and you're watching Our Vancouver.
Just looked outside and I was like, wait a minute, is that my goat on the horse? Arette now will paw at Bouge's shoulder or his back to get him to move forward, which would be similar to, how you would ask a horse to move forward as a human. So Bouge is just responding to a regular command. And Arette's worked on guiding him towards those tall trees he can't reach on his own. So it's really comical to watch right now.
All right, it's time for one of our favorite features. This is where we get to showcase a number of the photographs sent in by you, our audience. It is Blossom time. The lovely images are being sent to us from various places across southern BC. First, Debani Herrera Lira was in David Lamb Park in Vancouver and set this one up for us so beautifully. Thank you. And Keiko Suzawa was at Creekside Park to take in the beauty. Lovely image there too, Keiko. Thank you. And finally, Bikram Rijal was on 3rd Avenue in Vancouver and gave us his flowery perspective of the temple in the background and all those lovely flowers. Great stuff. Thanks to all of you. And do send us more. It can be blossoms. It could be anything else that reflects spring right now. Send your photographs to us, bcphotos@cbc.ca. That's bcphotos@cbc.ca. Now, as rental housing prices climb ever higher in our province, some people are getting a little creative about what they call home. Simon Stiles decided that he was going to take to the water, but that journey to the seaside was not without its challenges. Just watch.
Honey, come on. Good girl. Let's go.
Life off-grid has a romantic appeal, and I get the romance. There's plenty of great days and fantastic Instagram photos to get you inspired. But what it really requires is someone who can live in balance and deal with what they have and prepare for what's coming. Now, if you throw the ocean into that, well, it takes a little bit more, mainly stubbornness.
This is what happened.
Yeah.
Oh.
Supposedly somebody sliced an anchor line, even though we were holding. Let it be known, you can't trust a sailor in a storm. This is the 10th day in a row of windstorms. So far my boat hasn't broken loose. And I think there's a boat in the back that's being smashed to pieces right now on the rocks, but I can't do anything about it. Yeah, maybe I'll just wear a life jacket to bed. Now, 5 years ago, I was traveling the world in a camper van, and I didn't know any of this stuff about living off grid, really, and I didn't know anything about living on the water, especially. I was completely enamored with the romantic idea of living off grid on a fossil fuel-free sailboat. There's a saying about boats: the best day of being a boat owner is the day you buy her and the day you sell her. Well, this is the day I bought her. I bought a boat, Mom.
He's bought it.
I bought a boat.
Wow.
Today, I'm going to see the boat for the first time. I'm excited and nervous. Oh, but I have a really good feeling about it, so gonna go with my gut. When it comes to boats, there's no shortage of sayings. Another one is, boat is a hole in the water for you to throw money into. In this case, $5,000. I definitely didn't get what I paid for. Had I known then what I know now, I probably would have tucked tail and run away, but I didn't know anything back then. And this whole journey has been nothing but learning, sometimes the hard way. And so I got to work, and there was no shortage of work to do. I would pull rotting plank after rotting plank away, only to find more rot underneath. But slowly, I started integrating into my community here. I started working at the food bank because I could get a free shower there, and I finally brought the boat over to Silva Bay and did my first haul out. I'm not entirely sure why they trusted me to go on their rail, but lifting the boat up and removing keels and fixing miles of fiberglass, I think things were going too well. I think we were getting a lot of work done. We got a lot of sanding done. Got the boat squared away, so Mother Nature gave me some snow. I guess I must have impressed them because they gave me a job. I can't tell you how transformational this was. The absolute paradigm shift that working at a shipyard was, to be surrounded by mechanics and shipwrights, fine woodworkers and rigging experts, sailmakers, it was really something else. I started to get confident because I stopped making as many mistakes. I started setting out on my own adventures, sailing, motorcycling, backpacking, getting a little taste of what I was doing this for. So after 4 years, I've built myself a home, and it's not done, and I still got a ways to go. But what I've also done is picked up 1.5 million new skills. It's been a fantastic learning experience, and that's the part I really enjoy. It's picking up new skills, it's immersing myself in a community, it's really getting to know a place. And I guess that's always what I wanted. But I'm really looking forward to lifting anchor and setting sail.
Coming up, Johanna Wagstaff introduces us to BC's DIY weather forecasters.
They say that British Columbia is a land of 1,000 microclimates.
There's nothing a meteorologist must hate more than when you have some guy who's sitting up in the mountains and he's saying, like, I feel the weather, man. But
No.
But I mean,
I
that
love
is
that.
true.
But seriously, not true. It's hard to forecast for 1,000 microclimates every day. Enter Joey Only, the creator of the Interior Weather and Wilderness Watchers, a Facebook group he created 6 years ago that has grown to a community of almost 7,000 followers and contributors. Joey first became terrified by weather after he was struck by lightning at the age of 5. By the time he was struck by lightning a second time at age 20, yep, you heard that right, Joey had caught the weather bug.
Sure, it's self-taught, but I spend time watching university level lectures on YouTube and whatnot and talking to people like you, trying to get the real scoop. I think, like, talk about what you know. So, I mean, I've been on the land my whole life. It's kind of this only child thing where my friend was the forest. So I spent time in it, and I have things I've learned and want to communicate and speak about what you know. I think I decided to take it to this next level of doing more YouTube and more video because there's such a need for it.
That's when he started this Facebook group, where members actively post reports, questions, pictures, and forecasts daily. More if there's active weather.
There's a need for reporting here in the Caribou and Prince George areas. You have a lot of people who live up here, and when they turn the TV on, there's just not really often something being said to them directly about what to expect in their backyard.
And where are they posting from?
Probably going to have snow in Wells, Barkerville, Horsefly, Hickson, Alexandria, Skeech, Blackwater, Quesnel, Macleese, PG, Stoner, Red Rock, Bear Lake, Anaheim Lake, Williams Lake, Green Lake, Adams Lake, Elkley Lake, Moberly Lake, Monty Lake, Bushy Lake, Nimpo Lake, Christina Lake, Dease Lake, Beaver, Francois Lake, Stump. There's a lot of places here called Lake, man.
That was the world famous Frankie McDonald he was chatting with, by the way, YouTube forecaster from the East Coast. I have the privilege of forecasting the weather for British Columbia, but I don't have the capacity to hone in on every microclimate. But day to day, as is the case for life in general for the BC interior, people help each other out. And that can be a snow report, an interesting article on the season ahead, or thoughts on an impending storm. And in turn, those reports really help us meteorologists out. The more verification we can get on an event, when did the rain start, how much snow, was there flooding, the better our forecasts will get, and the better our micro forecasts will get.
And there's a lot of people who work in the bush every day, and they just want to know, like, what's it going to be like out there today? And, hey, Joey's saying, if you start seeing dark clouds at 3 this afternoon, there's going to be. And sure enough, by 11 o'clock, they're out of touch with the world, but then Environment Canada's throwing up their weather warnings and weather watches, and they didn't get to see that. All they saw was me blabbing as if I know something.
So thank you for sharing my passion, and keep those weather reports coming, and we will continue to learn from each other. And now, you're Science Smart. If you have a science question on your mind, send me a tweet and I'll try to get it answered.
Johanna, thank you very much. You are watching Our Vancouver. I'm Gloria Macarenko. Well, we are nearing Easter and all the sweets and treats that brings. Now, if you're trying a vegan diet, you're going to want to pay attention, because not all sugar is vegan, but there are a number of alternatives that are going to keep you to your diet, and they offer sweet benefits to everyone, not just to vegans. With us today is Angie Quaale. Angie is our go-to for all food-related information. She's the owner of Well Seasoned in Langley, and we've caught up with her at home today. Angie, hello there.
Hi, Gloria. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Now, what do you mean sugar isn't vegan, or all sugar isn't vegan? Why not?
Well, some refined white sugars are refined with beef bones, and they're used in the process of making white sugar. In British Columbia, in Western Canada, Rogers sugar is vegan sugar, but you do have to look at the label on the products that you're buying if you are vegan, because I think most people think that all sugar is vegan, and it isn't. Obviously, there's tons of tasty alternatives to refined sugar, and you just have to be a little more creative with the way you're cooking, or maybe change up some of your recipes a little bit if you're cooking with something that calls for sugar and you wanted to replace it with something that isn't a refined white sugar.
Okay, so what are some of the alternatives that you could substitute in a recipe?
Well, there's tons, actually. It depends the direction you want to go, and if you have any allergies or food or dietary restrictions. Coconut sugar is a really delicious alternative. Maple syrup is like the Canadian classic alternative. I've been making syrups from things like California raisins, for example, which provide you with a really delicious level of sweetness without sort of that sticky sweetness you get when you use refined sugar. So there are lots of options to replace refined white sugar, but depending on the option you choose, you do need to alter your recipe. Like if you're using a liquid sugar like maple syrup instead of a dry sugar, you have to replace some of or add a little bit more of your dry ingredients to compensate for the fact that you're adding more liquid to the recipe. So it does require a bit of adjustment.
Okay, now I want to thank you for sending over this plate of brownies. So these brownies are made with raisin syrup. So tell us about that.
Yes, they're so California raisins are really delicious, consistent level of sweetness. They're super accessible. They're a really great quality product. And what I've been doing is using raisin syrup in several recipes. And depending on how you treat the raisin syrup, you can almost replace it for something like a pomegranate molasses. Have you ever cooked with that?
Yes, I have. Love that.
So it's got that sweet, but it's still got a little bit of that tart note. So what I do is I take like a cup of raisins and a cup of water, and I cook them to bring them to a boil, turn the water off, let the raisins absorb some water, plump up, and then I puree the whole thing, strain it off, and you're left with this really sort of intense raisiny syrup that you can continue to cook down if you want a thick syrup. Now it's going to be a little bit tart because the raisins do have that inherent tartness because they're dried grapes, obviously. So you can add a little bit of maple syrup if you wanted to sweeten it, or a little bit of coconut sugar if you wanted to sweeten it. So in the brownies that I dropped off for you to try, those are made with raisin syrup in the brownie itself.
No, let's talk about texture here, because if you were going in thinking I'm going for a traditional brownie here, that is not the case. It's lovely, it's delicious, it's a little bit, I'll say chewy, but I'll say gummy. I'll say gummy or starchy. Maybe that's it, but it's not in an unpleasant way. It's just a different kind of a texture.
Yeah, so there's no eggs or dairy in this recipe. So it's a vegan brownie, and it's made with the raisin syrup. So you aren't going to get the same texture you would get from a traditional brownie that we're all sort of used to. But at the same time, you can actually feel pretty good about eating that brownie. There's no refined sugar in it. You can have two.
I got to tell you, I feel really good about eating this brownie right now. I feel really good about that. It is delicious. So thank you. I can't wait till you're back here in studio with us, honestly, when we do a little bit of a demonstration. So hopefully that can happen soon. Now, coming up to Easter again, any favorite Easter treats that you have?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of options. You can make all kinds of, if you're working with alternative sugars, you can do all kinds of really delicious things with maple syrup. I mean, the spring vegetables are just starting to come now, so we'll have asparagus, we'll have baby carrots. So all of those are really delicious on their own, but can be enhanced with a little bit of this raisin syrup that I've been using. Last weekend, I made some Brussels sprouts for dinner, and I roasted them with a little bit of olive oil in a super hot oven. When they came out, drizzled it with a little bit of that raisin syrup, a little bit of Parmesan cheese, which isn't vegan, but still delicious. And it kind of gave you that sort of sweet and sour note that you would get from like a balsamic vinegar or something. So I encourage people to make a fruit syrup, start with raisins, maybe try some dates. There's lots of options, and have some fun. There's way more available to sort of sweeten your food than just refined white sugar that we're all used to.
Angie, thank you so much. Thank you for the treats, for the brownies, and a very happy Easter to you.
To you too, Gloria. I'll look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Hi, my name is Michaela, and you're watching Our Vancouver.
If you would like to go and see some live music, American hip-hop star Tyler, the Creator, brings his unique style to the genre to Pacific Coliseum. That's coming up April 7th.
I was shifting, that's really why Cherry Bomb sounded so my taste started changing from what it was when they met me, but first impression is everything. They wanna let me go, always curious as a child and asking questions, so I ain't get no damn if and buts if they accept me. Yo, my boys get...
And Spiritualized, they're described as an English space rock band. Sounds kind of interesting. The band is made up of 3 former members of Spaceman 3, so you can see them at the Commodore April 9th.
Hey, Grant Lawrence from CBC Music here, and I would like to share with you an early contender for what I consider to be one of the most beautiful songs of the year. I'll play that tune for you in a moment, but first, I'd like to introduce you to, or maybe reintroduce you to, the artist. It's someone that I've paid attention to ever since I heard this debut single back in 2012.
I stood in an empty street today, all by myself, carving your name into the clay. Why'd you have to go away? Why'd you leave me in this way? I'm a sucker for your face.
Yes, that is Dartmouth, Nova Scotia singer-songwriter Mo Kenny with that exceptional debut song from 2012 called Sucker. That tune won the prestigious SOCAN Songwriting Prize from the Songwriters Society of Canada, which is a pretty great career start. Mo Kenny was first discovered by Halifax troubadour Joel Plaskett when he heard Mo's demos when he visited Mo's high school. He remembered Mo, and a few years later, Joel produced Mo Kenny's debut album that featured Sucker. Next came more success on Mo Kenny's Juno-nominated second album, In My Dreams.
Yeah, I faked it. From the song to the dance, opened up my eyes, I saw that chance and I took it. And I know that you would hate me, shooting fish inside a barrel, taking candy from a baby. I faked it.
That is Mo Kenny from Dartmouth with I Faked It. Now that tune won first prize in the USA Songwriting Competition in 2015, and the trophies became a career trend. Over the course of Mo Kenny's career, Mo has won a combination of 13 East Coast Music and Nova Scotia Music Awards. This year, Mo Kenny has returned with an absolutely lovely new single that looks like it is going to be climbing up the CBC Music Top 20. Oh, wow, sink into that one, eh? That is the amazing vocal and musical talent of Mo Kenny on the new single, With You, that deals with, according to Mo, a, quote, true-to-life account of loss, unquote. With You by Nova Scotia's Mo Kenny is currently climbing the CBC Music Top 20, and that's the song that you need to add to your playlist for this week. I'm Grant Lawrence. I'll check in with you again soon.
And coming up, piles of unwanted clothing and other textiles are littering our planet. What can we do about it? We'll talk about that after the break. Hi, welcome back to Our Vancouver. I'm Gloria Macarenko. Now, the amount of clothing that we wear that ends up in landfills is growing very quickly. And Canada relies heavily on other countries to deal with our unwanted garments. But more people are trying to tackle the problem locally. Our Padre X looks at how you can turn your clothing trash into treasure.
At this store, each garment gives new life to used wool clothing. The wool is recycled from clothing dumped into landfills in Southeast Asia and Africa, and it's made new in Italy. Eventually, it makes its way to Vancouver.
We can use all of these valueless or deemed valueless textiles, and we can recreate them into a bit of a timeless textile or a timeless shirts.
Annie helped to reduce about 300,000 pounds of textile waste from landfills abroad in 2020. By comparison, that's the weight of a blue whale. But what about keeping clothing out of BC's landfills? This campaign is aimed at encouraging people to think thrice about clothing waste.
Most people are donating their clothes, but some of them don't realize that they could be donating more, that there actually are markets for your holey socks. And there actually are a lot of markets for your ripped jeans.
She encourages people to buy more secondhand clothing and leave out as much as possible from the trash. There are plenty of places in the province where you can drop off usables or damaged clothing.
So in my hands, I have 44 t-shirts. This is the average amount of clothing waste a person from Vancouver makes. And if your thrift store doesn't want it, it'll end up in a facility like this.
BC is a hub of about 6 sorter and grader facilities like this. This one goes through about 40,000 pounds of unwanted clothes a day, sorting it out by fabric and selling it to markets abroad to be reused. Some of it gets recycled into rags, shipped into businesses all over the country, and then the leftovers with no use go into the landfill.
The majority of materials that go into the landfill are completely unwearable shoes and material which is flaking with this polyester, polyurethane coating on it, and material that is completely toxic, covered with paint.
Clothing should also not be covered in oil or have any mold. The feathers from your ripped winter jackets are also recycled in Eastern Europe, and sweaters with holes can also find a new life.
The most important thing is not to throw anything away, to send it to a facility where the most can be made out of that material.
But some say sending unwanted clothing abroad should not be the only solution.
We're really just shifting the problem over to other folks.
One day I would love to be able to, set up a rag house here in British Columbia in the Lower Mainland where we would, be able to cut off that whole sort of circular global supply chain and go straight from our own consumption to our own uses.
Blankhorn says in Canada, it's tough to recycle or unwanted clothing locally.
And that machinery is expensive, and the process is, it takes some time.
But she says more policies are needed to hold businesses responsible for their used clothing in Canada. There's also options for take-back programs where retailers take back their clothing and turn it into new products, doing clothing swaps to exchange used clothing with others, or even setting up repair cafes to fix up damaged clothing.
I think all of those forces will put pressure on growing our ability here locally to have viable end markets for that apparel so we don't have to send it away.
That's the hope for many locals working tirelessly to reduce our clothing waste. Padre X, CBC News, Surrey.
Benit, thank you so much for that story. Now, as the days get longer, a lot of Canadians start to think about their gardens. And if you are a dedicated gardener who likes to grow plants from seed, now is the time to get started. Gardening expert Rob Sproul has some tips.
Growing your own food is awesome, and there's a couple ways to do it. You can go to the garden center in May and get little starter plants, or you can start it from seed. You want to start it right about now, late February, early March. Now, you want to start with a good seeding mix, and you want to make sure it's moist. So this is nice and moist, not damp. Okay, you get it nice and even. Whatever flat you use is up to you. I use an open flat. You can use little ones with cells, what have you, but you just want to make sure it's good to go for the seeds. So what do you seed first? Well, if you love chives, you want to seed them in late February. Other than that, early March is tomatoes and peppers time, okay? You want to seed these guys 8 weeks before the last frost, like whenever that's going to be. But you take the package. Key thing on the package, by the way, is the days. Check the days when you buy the package. That's how long it takes to mature until you can start chowing down on it. There's the magic right there, everything you need. So you put them in a little row. I'm not doing it very well. And you take a little saison of soil to keep the birds off in case you have those in your house. You make sure it's moist. You put the dome on. The dome's important because it keeps the humidity in the seeds so you get better germination. As soon as you start to see the green, the dome comes off so they don't stretch out. You want to keep your seedlings moist but not damp. You want to give them a lot of light after they break the surface. A big window's great. If it's cloudy outside, it'll start to stretch out, or if it's inside too long, it'll start to stretch out. That's typically fine. Just plant it a little deeper. Try growing your own food, even if it's just a little bit this year. It's an adventure. Happy spring.
Coming up, the search for swim lessons. This is Our Vancouver. I'm Gloria Macarenko. Now, if you have tried to sign up for swimming lessons in BC, you know the frustration. Demand for swim programs across the province is sky high. It's a problem even before the pandemic. And as Karen Larson explains, community pools just can't keep up.
Every parent knows swimming lessons are important to teach children basic water safety and survival skills. But in most BC cities, getting into lessons at the local pool is no easy feat. 2 years of swimming pool shutdowns and restrictions from the COVID-19 pandemic means there is pent-up demand and not nearly enough supply.
There has been a lack of access to pools, so I think everybody's looking to get into them at the same time. And that's definitely creating a backlog and a shortage of swim lessons.
In Prince George, where a new community pool is set to open later this year, the wait list for lessons is 700 names long. Vancouver, Kamloops, and Kelowna also report long wait lists, while in Burnaby, the pressure is greatest on the preschool learn-to-swim programs, where the instructor-to-student ratio is as low as 1 to 3.
The message is just to be patient and to be kind to. We know we're trying to increase our demand or supply to actually meet the needs of everybody.
Basic water safety knowledge is especially important in BC with our abundance of lakes, rivers, and ocean. But besides that pandemic backlog, there's a second factor fueling the swimming lesson shortage: not enough lifeguards.
There certainly is a shortage. We've been hiring constantly since the fall of last year. And there's been both the reluctance amongst the public and as well as staff to return to the same crowded conditions in swimming pools.
Pool programmers say they are doing everything to help solve the bottleneck, but think it will likely take a couple of years for things to return to normal. Karen Larson, CBC News, Vancouver.
Hello, I'm Margot, and this is Our Vancouver.
Karen, thank you so much for that. Now, I don't think any of us will soon forget the last 2 years of living in a healthcare emergency. COVID-19 has brought us so many changes and challenges, but if we do start to forget, we have a good record of the history. CBC's Leanne Young interviews CBC photojournalist Ben Nelms about his experiences of documenting the pandemic.
Ben, there have been few people who have done a better job at capturing what this pandemic has done and how it's changed us as people. So we wanted to talk to you about some of the photographs you've captured. Let's see some of them right now. Brad, you've got them for us? Yeah, there it is. So I asked you to highlight some images that you thought were quite profound over the last 2 years, and here they are coming up. They're all kind of within the same period, and I think these images taken between March and May of 2020. Can you talk us through these?
Yeah, I think the impact of the photos from the first period of COVID was just so abrupt and so blunt to a lot of us, including me. You know, photos affect 3 people. They affect the person in the photo, the people looking at the photo, and the photographer. So these images sort of resonate with me just because of, you know, the spaces were so different in the environment. Like this lineup at Costco, you know, linear spaces became logistical spaces, such as this parking lot, and trying to sort of illustrate that was important.
Was this during the toilet paper hoarding time?
Yeah, this was a grocery store run. This was sort of a main theme of the start of COVID, and I found every week sort of different themes sort of would pop up, and you know, I thought it was my responsibility to try and convey those themes.
Yeah, and this one, I mean, the theme, a big theme I think for a lot of people was loneliness, and I just thought this photo captured it so perfectly. It was so heartbreaking.
Yeah, I'm always looking for, you know, juxtaposition or, you know, something that's sort of an unusual moment in a usual space. I thought that this was interesting because it was Robson Street, it was dead. There was this, you know, senior woman waiting for the bus in front of this ad of two people smiling and hugging. And I just thought that sort of illustrated a theme of connection or lack of.
Yeah, so many people were left so lonely, and people doing things in very different ways, like we see in this image. I think there was just a lot of that happening. Did your approach change at all? You know, taking photos during the pandemic?
Yeah, definitely. At the start of the pandemic, I sort of had the mentality of fishing, which sort of I term as waiting for content in a certain area. So I'll be in an environment and I'll wait for a subject or someone to walk by. And that didn't really work because I'd be waiting, you know, 30 minutes for someone to walk by. So I turned and pivoted to sort of a hunting approach where I would be searching for the content and searching for the subjects.
And you found this here.
Yeah, this is at Zero Ab, between the international boundary between the US and Canada. And these two people were just chatting, and this was just a found moment, which I always find are the best moments.
Right, because the borders were closed.
Borders were closed, yeah. So
this was the only way.
Yeah, exactly.
Fascinating. I think we've also got this one that's, yeah, this one's super interesting. What are we seeing here? I think I have an idea, but tell us about it.
So I think as COVID sort of prolonged, the images sort of got a little bit repetitive. It was a lot of masks, it was a lot of lineups, and I wanted to sort of change that and disrupt that a little bit. So I went from, you know, looking at COVID from a macro lens to a micro sort of what was going on, and I noticed that people were touching things and interacting with things in a different way that I haven't seen before. So I just sort of stalked a few crosswalks and waited for people to push the buttons over, I think, 2 days, and got a few funny ones.
Apparently there's one more photo that didn't quite make it in here that you loved.
There was one that got away, yes. There was a lady with her dog, and she used the dog's paw to press it. And ethically, I can't ask anyone to do anything again or stage anything, so I'll just live with that in my mind.
Right, so now we know the secret. Yeah.
Yes.
So Ben, I find you're just so good at bringing our eyes to things that we may not have noticed in the past. But what are you looking for when you're behind that lens to capture some of these really outstanding images?
Yeah, I'm only looking for content. My mind is only thinking about content. Some of my favorite photos and some of the most impactful photos ever taken are all content. Some of them aren't even in focus. They don't have to be. It's the content trumps everything, and that's what makes a great photo.
Right, and that image I really loved. The man who was all ready to go for St. Paddy's Day didn't get the memo there, right? And then the outcome of some of that, the toilet paper hoarding. And this image, what is this one about?
This was when businesses were sort of left in the dark about what to do or how to operate, and I found that a lot of small businesses were just sort of open, but there was really no one there to consume. So I just was trying to illustrate that, and this man was on Denman Street just waiting for customers.
This one almost looks very New York. I love that image. Okay, well, Ben Nelms, thank you for joining us today. Always such a great insight, great to talk to you. And you know, just even when you're in the field, it's I know you're always got your eye on content, but you're always a great chat and lovely to be around, and we're lucky to have you.
My pleasure, thank you.
All right, thanks for being here, Ben Nelms.
And that's all for Our Vancouver for this week. I hope you can join me weekday afternoons on CBC Radio 1 for On the Coast. For now, bye-bye.